Welcome back to the deep dive. We received some really powerful material from you detailing the leadership of General Walton H. Walker during the Korean War, and also the, well, incredible story of Korean veteran Kim Il-jin.
That's right. And this deep dive, it's more than just military tactics. It really gets into ethical leadership, sacrifice, and maybe most importantly, the duty to remember.
Exactly. We're tracing two key themes from the sources: Walker's sacrifice, Haesing in Korean, which the material argues basically saved South Korea at its absolute lowest point.
And the second theme is Kim Il-jin's lifelong commitment to requital, or Bo-eun, repaying that debt of grace. He fought for, 46 years against historical forgetfulness, Mongkok.
So the narrative kind of lays itself out in three parts: the hero, Walker; the witness, Kim Il-jin and his vow; and then the legacy, the Memorial Association carrying it forward. But first, we need to set the scene. Just how bad was it in the summer of 1950 when Walker arrived?
Oh, it was catastrophic, truly. In just the first, 6 weeks or so, North Korea had overrun something like 90% of the South.
90%.
Yeah. Total collapse seemed imminent. The government was seriously discussing where they could even flee to set up in exile. Their backs were completely against the wall.
And the only thing left was the Nakdong River defense line.
That was it, the absolute last stand, often called the Pusan Perimeter. It was the nation's lifeline, basically.
We hear Pusan perimeter, but it sounds vast. How small was this area physically?
It was surprisingly small. Think of a compressed bridgehead crammed into the southeastern corner of the peninsula, roughly the size of Connecticut, maybe.
Wow, that's small.
If that line broke, the war was over.
Oh,
Full stop. The peninsula would have been unified under the North right then and there.
okay, let's unpack this then. General Walker steps into this seemingly hopeless situation. Looking at the map, you'd think the only rational military move was, what, withdrawal? Evacuation.
From a purely textbook tactical view, yes, retreat or strategic withdrawal, as they might call it, probably seemed like the logical step to save the remaining forces.
But Walker saw it differently.
He did. He understood that abandoning the perimeter meant abandoning the nation. A tactical retreat would have been a complete strategic, an existential defeat for South Korea.
Which leads us to that defining moment. The pressure must have been immense.
Whoa.
What was the single decision that changed everything?
It's reported to have happened July 29th, 1950. Command room in Daegu. You can almost imagine the air thick with exhaustion, fear, probably silence.
Yeah.
And Walker stands up and gives the order. The sources quote it essentially as, "We must stand or die." It became codified as no more retreat. In Korean, Deu isangwi hutionyun apda.
Wow. Stand or die. That's
Yeah.
more than just a military order, isn't it? It sounds almost like a psychological tactic.
I think that's exactly what the source material suggests. It was leadership language, pure and simple. Walker knew fear leads to confusion, and confusion leads to retreat, often disorganized retreat.
So he just took retreat off the table.
Exactly. He cut off the option. The sea was literally at their backs. By removing that possibility, he removed the constant, agonizing question of when to pull back. He replaced it with just one single, brutal focus. Hold the line. Survive. This really showed his character, his B, as the sources frame it.
And he didn't just say it. He backed it up with a different way of fighting. The sources call it his firefighter strategy.
Right. Mobile defense. Girong Banyo. See, the problem was the length of the perimeter, about 240 kilometers, far too long for the number of troops they had.
So how did mobile defense work?
Walker used the terrain to his advantage, specifically the interior lines.
Interior lines. What does that mean exactly?
It just means the roads inside the perimeter were shorter and generally better than the routes the North Koreans had to use coming from the outside. So Walker didn't try to hold every single spot rigidly.
Okay.
He kept strong reserve forces, like the U.S. Marines Mobile, ready to move fast. Whenever the North Koreans broke through somewhere, he'd rush these reserves to that spot, like a firefighter putting out a dangerous flare-up.
Containing the breaches before they spread.
Precisely. Preventing a local breakthrough from becoming a total collapse of the line.
And the sources really emphasize the battle for Daegu, specifically Dabudong, as critical. The ROK 1st Division was really struggling there.
Dabudong was seen as the heart of the Nakdong line. If it fell, Daegu would fall, and the line would likely rupture. Walker knew this. When the ROK 1st Division was on the verge of breaking, he went all in. This demonstrates his his action.
Oh, and how?
He promised the Korean commander the full weight of the U.S. 8th Army's firepower, artillery, air support, everything. And he delivered. The most dramatic example. He requested B-29 carpet bombing.
B-29s. Strategic bombers for tactical support. That's highly unusual.
Extremely unusual, but it shows his absolute commitment. They dropped, I think the figure is 98 tons of bombs on a relatively small area, about 5.6 square miles, just to obliterate the North Korean assembly points and supply lines for that specific attack.
He was making good on that standard I promise with everything he had.
Absolutely. No matter the risk, no matter how unconventional.
It's amazing he could even think beyond just holding that perimeter day to day. But the sources say his defense was also crucial for something much bigger happening elsewhere, right? The Incheon landing.
Yes, that's a key point. Walker's defense wasn't just about survival, it was also about enabling MacArthur's masterstroke at Incheon. His job was to hold the North Korean main forces, keep them pinned down in the south.
Like a bloody shackle, as the sources put it.
A very apt description, for over 40 days. But it involved agonizing decisions. The most critical was probably deploying the U.S. Marine Corps at the Nektong Bulge near Changyang and Yongsan.
But wait, weren't the Marines MacArthur's key force, his reserve, for the Incheon invasion itself?
Exactly. That was the gamble. Walker used MacArthur's ace in the hole to plug a dangerous gap in the Pusan perimeter. He knew that if the perimeter collapsed before Incheon, the landing would be pointless, maybe even a suicide mission. There'd be no friendly force to link up with.
So he risked MacArthur's entire plan, and probably his own career, to make sure Incheon had a chance.
He did. He had to ensure the North Koreans were fully committed, looking south, tied down by the fighting on the perimeter. That enabled the secrecy and surprise needed for Incheon to work.
And part of that deception involved the Jangsari landing, which the sources mention had a terrible human cost.
Jangsari is tragic. A diversionary landing, primarily using 772 student soldiers, intended to make the North Koreans believe any major threat was coming from the East Coast, away from Incheon. It worked in a strategic sense, but the cost was immense. It really underscores the brutal realities of Walker's task.
This weight, this cost, seems to lead directly into the next major insight from the material, this idea of debt or bit. It apparently shifted Walker's whole perspective.
Yes, it moves us from strategy to the ethical core. The sources highlight a specific, though likely reconstructed, encounter. A very brief exchange between Walker and a young RK intelligence NCO, Sergeant Major Kim Mi-jin, right on the front lines at Dabudam.
Kim Mi-jin again. This is where their stories first connect. Walker asks something like, "Why are you here? Why fight against these odds?"
And Kim Mi-jin's reported answer was simple but profound. "We will fight to repay the debt your forces have given us." Bit.
That word debt. Why did that hit Walker so hard, according to the sources? It seems different from just, ally cooperation.
Because it reframed the entire conflict for him on a human level. Walker, like most military leaders, was trained to fight for duty, for country, for ideology, the West Point Code, democracy versus communism, that sort of thing.
Standard motivations.
Right. But hearing this young Korean soldier talk about fighting out of a sense of personal ethical debt, I need to repay the sacrifice the Americans are making, it apparently struck a deep chord. It wasn't just geopolitics anymore.
It became about human ethics, reciprocity.
Exactly. A deeply personal sense of obligation and gratitude. The sources suggest this doubled Walker's moral burden. He felt an even fiercer commitment not just to win, but to support the ROK forces who were fighting with such honor.
And this ethical dimension helps explain the leadership model the sources extract from his actions, the be-no-do model.
That's right. It takes a standard U.S. Army leadership framework, but shows how Walker embodied it under the most extreme pressure imaginable. It's a very practical application.
Okay, let's break that down. First is B. What does that mean in this context?
B, existence character. This is the absolute foundation. It's who the leader is inside, their values, their moral compass, their courage. For Walker, the sources point to his inherent toughness, his refusal to give up. They even call it his Texas tenacity. You can't lead effectively if your core character isn't strong. Being comes first.
Okay, makes sense. Then no.
No, insight strategy. This is the intellectual part. Strategic thinking, understanding the situation, adapting. Walker didn't just copy-paste tactics. He knew Patton's fast-moving style from WWII, but he adapted it. Knew how to make it work for the specific terrain and challenges in Korea, leading to his mobile defense strategy.
So understanding and adapting. And finally, do.
Do action execution. This is putting it all into practice, taking responsibility, making the hard calls, seeing it through. For Walker, it was enforcing no more retreat, personally visiting the front lines, committing resources like those B-29s, standing with his soldiers. The model really flows. Your character informs your understanding, which guides your actions.
It paints a picture of truly integrated leadership. But then comes the tragic part. This leader, who embodied survival, didn't survive the war himself.
No, and not in battle. It's the ultimate terrible irony. He navigated the hellscape of the Nakdong defense, survived immense pressure, constant danger, only to die in a vehicle accident.
When and where did it happen?
December 23rd, 1950. Just a few months after the perimeter held and the tide turned. It was in Dabongdong, an area near Seoul. He was apparently on his way to present an award to his son, Sam Walker, who was also serving there.
The sources describe his death as completing his sacrificial perfection. A very powerful phrase.
It is. Dying not in the fight itself, but claimed by the very land he fought to save. And that specific spot, Dabongdong, becomes the focal point for the other half of our story. Kim Ye-jin.
The witness of destiny.
Unmyeongwi Mokyokja, as the sources call him. Whether Sergeant Major Kim physically saw the accident scene or just understood the immense weight of Walker's sacrifice having met him earlier, we don't know for sure. But what's clear is that he made a vow right then.
The counter-vow to Walker's sacrifice.
Yes, no more forgetfulness.
Deoizangwi Mongagun Iyapta. He dedicated his life to ensuring Walker's sacrifice wouldn't be forgotten.
And this wasn't just, writing a letter to the editor. This was a lifelong crusade. 46 years, the sources say.
46 years, a personal battle against what he saw as national forgetfulness. It was an immense struggle.
What made it so difficult? Well, partly, it was a fight against commercialization overshadowing memory. Kim Ye-jin was focused on the actual specific site of the accident, Dabongdong 596-5. But meanwhile, the name Walker became widely known in Korea because of the famous Walker Hill Hotel, built in 1963 as a recreational facility.
So the place of leisure was overshadowing the place of tragedy.
Exactly. It created confusion and apathy. Kim had to fight bureaucracy, indifference, and correct the public memory about where the significant event happened. He poured his own money, his sage, into this. The sources describe his dedication as fanatical zeal, jibnyum.
His whole life became about this one act of remembrance, a living symbol of requital.
That's a perfect way to put it.
So in a way, Kim Ye-jin's actions provide the necessary conclusion, the ethical completion to Walker's story. Walker's chapter was sacrifice.
And Kim Ye-jin wrote the essential final chapter, gratitude, remembrance. And this is where the story becomes more than just history. The sources argue that this proves leadership's real value isn't just winning battles.
It's about how that leadership, that sacrifice, is remembered and carried forward.
Precisely, how it shapes future generations.
Which brings us to the present day, and the effort to make sure this isn't just one man's incredible obsession, but something sustainable. The Walker Memorial Association.
Right. Their mission is to take Kim Ye-jin's incredibly personal, decades-long dedication and transform it into a sustainable system of requital. They want to institutionalize the memory.
And their core idea is powerful. Memory is leadership. Gyokai got Radio Ship Ida. Why equate memory directly with leadership?
Because forgetting the sacrifices, forgetting the reasons for alliances and commitments, erodes the very foundation those things are built on. Remembering Walker's leadership and Kim's requital reinforces the ethical core that should guide present and future leaders. It's about continuity of values.
So how are they doing this? What's the strategy moving forward?
The sources outline three main pillars. First, history education. They're developing curriculum around Walker leadership, not just for the military, but for businesses, for young people, showing how that no more retreat mindset applies in any crisis. They call it the Walker Leadership School concept.
Okay, education. What else?
Second, treating the story as a cultural asset. This means modernizing how it's told. Digital content, maybe AI-driven experiences, publications, exhibitions, and a key part seems to be the Walker Road Tour.
Taking people to the actual places.
Exactly. Getting people out to the Nakdong river sites, to Dabudam, to Dabongdong, making the history tangible, moving it off the page and onto the ground.
Makes sense. And the third pillar.
International exchange. Using the shared story American Sacrifice, Korean gratitude to deepen the ROK-US alliance on a human ethical level, moving beyond just treaties and troop numbers to shared values.
So it's a really comprehensive approach. You have the Walker Line, the Nakdong River, No More Retreat, and the Boeing Line, Dabongdong, Kim Ye-jin's No More Forgetfulness.
And where they converge, the sources argue, is a kind of ethical textbook for the future, an unbroken line connecting sacrifice and gratitude.
A blueprint for leadership grounded in memory.
That's the essence of it. Ensuring Walker's ultimate sacrifice and Kim Agent's ultimate requital continue to resonate.
So reflecting on all this, what does it mean for you, our listener? The source material really pushes this idea that everyone, in their own way, faces a no more retreat moment at some point. Maybe it's financial pressure, maybe it's chaos in your organization, maybe a personal crisis. What does your no more retreat look like? And maybe think about that other concept too, the debt of gratitude. What debts, maybe not as dramatic as Kim Agent's, but what debts of gratitude are you responsible for remembering or perhaps repaying in your own life, your work, your community? That's something for you to mull over or explore on your own.